Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we're going over a fun hand from a $1,500 buy-in World Series of Poker event. So, folds around to a probably tight aggressive kid who's not doing anything too absurd, who raises to 700 from the low jack seat. And with pocket nines in the hijack seat, I am pretty much always calling. If you re-raise here, what's going to happen is when you get action, you're going to be against a pretty strong range unless your opponents are humongous calling stations. Now, I don't know anything about my opponents besides here I have them labeled as probably tight or aggressive kid. So I have no reason to think my opponent's a calling station. He's not going to call my re-raise with ace-5 offsuit or pocket twos or just junk, right? He's going to play well. So if he's going to play well, then I don't want to be re-raising this. I would much rather call, play in position with a hand that's going to make a decent pair a lot of the time. So everybody else folds, flop comes 7-4-2, and the opponent checks. So now, I have the best hand most of the time. I am pretty happy with this scenario. So I want to bet. Now, of course, the opponent could be slow playing. If the opponent does check raise, it's going to be a nasty spot. But most of the time, when our opponent's checking, it's going to be with a marginal made hand, because that is typically what you want to be checking with. You want to be betting with your best made hands and your draws. You want to be checking with your marginal made hands and your garbage. So what is a marginal made hand on 7-4-2? It's going to be pocket sixes, pocket fives, pocket threes, ace king, ace queen, ace jack, maybe like 8-7 suited if he has it. Some of these hands, this is a spot where maybe the opponent should just want to bet with this whole range because the board is so incredibly dry. But I think it's fine for him to do some checking and then check calling, or maybe even some check raising if he wants to slope check raise with maybe like bottom set. Maybe he wants to check raise with aces. I think that's probably reasonable. He could also check raise with stuff like Jack 10 of diamonds. I think that'd be pretty sweet. Jack 10 of clubs, right? Anyway, opponent does check, and I'm going to bet. And I don't want to go too big because I'm trying to get called by hands like ace king and pocket threes. If I bet bigger here, like 2,000 into the 2,200 pot, the opponent's going to start, well, he's going to call still, but he's going to definitely fold to any additional aggression. So while I will get more money in the pot now, I give up the future potential to get more money in the pot later. So I like betting about 1,000. And the opponent does call. Turn is 5 of hearts. I'm sorry, 5 of diamonds. The opponent checks again. So when the opponent does check call the flop, alarm bells should go off a little bit. That said, I still think I have the best hand in this spot a ton. I may be losing here to a hand like pocket aces, kings, queens, jacks, or tens that is playing it really slow. Obviously, pocket fives just got there on the turn. Ace-3 suited got there on the turn. That said, I do still win a lot of the time here. And if my opponent does have ace-king, I definitely don't mind protection. And most people, if they have ace-king in the spot, will just check call on the turn if I bet small enough. So I think something like half pot's pretty nice. I bet about 2,300. I go 2,600. I think I prefer a slightly smaller bet because I really do still want to make ace-king be in a scenario where they can stick around and then just let it go check on the river. That said, maybe we still value bet against ace-king because a lot of players in $1,500 buy-in events may call a turn plus a river bet with ace-king, even though it's not a good call. It's very important to realize that just because a play is good or fundamentally sound does not mean your opponents are going to make that play. So many players make the egregious error all the time of just looking at their cards, looking at the odds, and thinking, all right, my hand's pretty good, I guess I have to call, without really thinking about how it plays into their whole range and how it plays against the opponent's range. So anyway, I like a bet here, and I do go 2,600. I think I prefer a little bit smaller. Maybe I could look and tell the opponent kind of liked his hand, in which case I like a bigger bet. River's a 4, which is great. And now, well, here we are. Like I said, I think we need to bet a smallish size to try to get called by ace-king, pocket eights, pocket sixes, pocket threes, maybe even ace-queen, maybe ace-jack will call if I bet small enough. You may say, don't you fear your opponent check raising you? Well, yes, we do. If you think your opponent is a good, loose, aggressive player who's going to be fighting hard and is going to be playing well in these situations, you should be very inclined to check behind. If I was making a quiz for my site, pokercoaching.com, I would give betting tiny, something like 10 points, 10 out of 10, checking 9 out of 10 points, and then the bigger bet sizes, they get worse and worse, like half pots, maybe, I don't know, 7 points, Betting pot is maybe like 3 points, not very good. Going all in would be just the worst. Because if you go all in, what's going to call you, right? Well, probably only really good hands, and I actually don't do so good against really good hands. So in this scenario, I think we either need to check, especially if you get the vibe that your opponent actually does like their hand and they're not folding, or you should bet small. And I typically like betting small against most players because when you bet small, they will just find hero calls with ace high. So I do go small, we get called, and the opponent has pocket queens. So this is one of the rare instances where we do value 10 ourselves. Just because every once in a while you lose when you make relatively thin value bets does not necessarily mean it was bad. I think a lot of people think that a value bet was bad if they bet and get called and they lose, and that is not true. Just like whenever you bluff, if you bluff and get called and you lose, it does not mean it was a bad bluff. It just means, well, it could be a bad bluff, but it also means that you ran into a part of your opponent's range that is going to call. And quite often when you are bluffing, you know your opponent's going to call with X percentage of their range and fold X percentage of the range. And as long as the math works out, it makes sense. In this scenario, especially in a $1,500 buy-in World Series event, I think we can be quite confident value betting, and I'm just very, very happy with the spot. And I'm happy that our opponent just didn't bet the flop and bet the turn and bet the river. Because notice, go back to the flop, right? If our opponent just bets 1,600 on the flop, I call. If our opponent bets 2,500 on the turn or 3,000 on the turn, I call. If they bet 4,000 on the river, yeah, it's a rough spot, but I'm going to call. And that would have resulted in me losing 5,000 more chips or so across the board. And obviously, I'd rather not lose 5,000 more chips across the board. So that's going to be it for this hand for PokerNews.com. Again, if you like the scoring that I mentioned earlier, where I go through and score each potential answer, each possibility, go to check out PokerCoaching.com. You can get a completely free trial. I put a lot of work into it, and I'm sure that if you're watching this video, you will enjoy it. So check it out, again, at PokerCoaching.com. Good luck in your games, have fun, and I'll talk to you later.